Greetings, greetings, family. Sister Shanice in the house. I believe we are live on YouTube. Welcome to the Sister Shanice Show. Slight technicals in the background, but you know how it goes. And our guest for this evening is on his way as well. All being well, will definitely be with us very shortly. So, let me just mute the site so that we don't get any feedback at all. But yeah, feeling a bit lonely in the house at the moment, but all's going to change very soon, I am sure. Let me just make sure that we are recording. Excellent. Recording is in progress. So my computer's running a little slow. Apologies for that. Certainly hope that it doesn't make any glitches come your end, but put the word out, family. We are now live and direct. Let the family know, let your friends know that we are now live on YouTube. Tonight, we're going to be talking about African Liberation Day, and we are going to be putting the liberation back into Africa. Yes, indeed. And so what I'm going to do is to share my screen. All being well. It's going a little slow, but it will happen. And I just want to share with you an event that we have got coming up tomorrow. Okay, and I would love dearly for you all to be in the house for this event. So let's just wait for that to come up. And then I will be able to share my screen with you and tell you all about an African Liberation Day event that is going to be happening tomorrow, Thursday, the 25th of May. And it's an online event, which means that wherever you are in the world, you will be able to join us for that event. So as I said, computer getting a little slow, a little glitchy, but sincere apologies for that. Certainly hope that you know, it doesn't interrupt your viewing pleasure and that you can hear me okay as well. So as you come through the door, you know how we do. Kindly let me know that you're in the house. Let me know where in the world that you are watching us from. And yeah, I will be giving you a shout out during the show this evening. So we welcome you. We celebrate you wherever you are. We are a global family. We are the African family. And we are everywhere in the world. So we're going to be going into details about African Liberation Day and what that is all about. But for now, let me just quickly share with you the event. And I got a glimpse a little while ago that our guest is in the house, which is absolutely phenomenal. Our brother Leader Bandaka is getting himself ready backstage. Okay, so let me just share with you, family. Tomorrow is the official launch of African Liberation Day. And the theme for the event is the Grand African Renaissance Part 2. And it's going to be a panel reasoning. I'm honored to be part of that panel alongside our sister, Dr. Asha, our brother, Rev. Dr. Philippe Schock, and we also have Professor James Smalls, who is joining us on the international panel tomorrow. Absolutely phenomenal. It's going to be a great conversation between us as a family. And we're going to be talking about what is it going to take on an individual and a collective level for us to experience the Grand African Renaissance. And you can even drop your views and thoughts in the chat as well. Get involved in the conversation and the debate. So that's going to be happening tomorrow for the opening of African Liberation Day. It's going to be a live event. It's going to be streamed via the PACM TV YouTube channel. And then, so that is the one that's going to be happening on Thursday. And then on Monday, family, I'm sure you have all heard of our brother, Robin Walker, author, lecturer on African history. And he is going to be the keynote speaker at the event live in Manchester on Monday, the 29th of May. So we're celebrating African Liberation Day from tomorrow all the way through to Monday. And there are various events that are happening up and down the country. So if there's an event happening where you are and you want to share the information with the family, please do. But all being well, hopefully we will see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. through to 8 p.m. UK time. So a bit earlier than my shows usually are. So do tune in. Early tomorrow from 6 p.m. through to 8 p.m. That's Thursday, the 25th of May, for the African Renaissance event as part of the African Liberation Day celebration. So family, certainly looking forward to you joining us for that event. Right, I did get a glimpse of our brother. Let me see if I can find him in the gallery. Not yet, but certainly looking out for our brother Leader Bandaka. So let me know when you are in the house. Let me see if I can spot him a different way. Yes, I can. Yes, so turn on your camera, Leader, and we will be able to bring you front of house once you are ready. Okay, so family, we have a really interesting conversation that's going to be happening today. So Leader's just getting himself ready backstage. So let me just minimize that presentation. Let me go over and try and find the family on YouTube. Let's see where you are and what's happening over there. See who we've got in the chat. Yeah, fantastic. We've got some of the family members in the house. I can see that I'm sticking on YouTube. My apologies for that. We have our beloved sister Afri Jamo in the house. Yes, our sister Afri Jamo joins us all the way from Ghana. Welcome, welcome, Sister Afri Jamo. The Jamaican drunkers in the house. Rise up, rise up. Kimani's in the house. Rise up, rise up. Yes, it's wonderful to see the family coming through the door rather. Yenge Lumbu Kiambote. Brother Nusi is in the house, rising us up. Oh, fantastic. Yes, all love and jokes happening in the house already. The Sheriffess is in the house saying, greetings, blessed love to you. I was wondering what was happening for African Liberation Day. Wonderful. Yes, now you know, and hopefully you'll be joining us tomorrow for African Liberation Day, the Sheriff, along with everyone else. Welcome, welcome, Brother Kamani. Good to have you in the house as well. Brother Kwame, welcome, welcome. Afrijamo, Robin Walker was my lecturer while studying African studies in the UK. Boy, we learned a lot of stuff. Absolutely. He was my lecturer for a time as well when I was studying African history. Yes, he's a brother, you know, who has shared his knowledge with so many of us people. Just want to remind those who are joining us on Zoom to kindly make sure that you are your mic is off. Let me bring front of house. I can see our brother Leader Bandaka. Let me just see how I can add him here so that he can join us front of house. Yes, so welcoming the family. There's certainly a lot happening for African Liberation Day, and we are going to be putting the liberation back into African Liberation Day. Front of house, we now have our beloved brother Leader Bandaka. Welcome, welcome, Leader.
Tendaiwari, Sister Shanice. Rumbid Zokuna Mwari, Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. We were to trample some Bigfoot demon this evening, I tell you. But as I said, teamwork make the dream work. You know, I give thanks to my beloved Queen and our wonderful brother Olatunji. They just got their heads together and sort the thing out. So, you know,
we thank them dearly as well. As you say, teamwork makes the dream work, and rising up the entire team of the Al-Kabelan revivalist movement. Brother Olatunji, Sister Kai,
heal them, heal
to
them,
the
heal
entire
them.
team. Tunde, we rise you all up.
Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, I've had some demons this end as well. As you can see, I don't have my usual backdrop, but that's another story. My computer is just going really slow. It always happens on a Wednesday evening, but we press ahead regardless.
We press ahead. We press ahead.
Yes, indeed. So the family are coming through the door. Let me allow you to greet the family. I'm going to spotlight you, brother leader. And as you do, I'm going to let our family know that we are now live. Let me remove myself from spotlight so you can introduce yourself to the entire family.
Tendai mwari mukuru kuzai mukuru tendai mwari royal elders, queens and kings, princesses and princes of great Mama Africa. I bring greetings in the most precious, powerful and bountiful name of our motherland, Al-Kebulan Mama Africa, in the sacred spirits of our most gracious ancestors, and in a prayer for oneness, hope, and prosperity for all African people upon the face of Mother Earth. Rumbidzokunamwariye Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. It is a joy to be an African, and a joy and a blessing to be on Sister Shanice's show, ministering to the most important and indubitably the most beautiful people on the planet, the sons and daughters of Africa. It is an honor. It is a blessing to be in service to the great people of Africa as we gather here in this hall of faith, or virtual hall of faith and virtual hall of learning to nurture, nourish, and fine-tune ourselves so that we may make ourselves worthy of being called the children of the Most High, the sons and daughters of Africa, the descendants of Muzumu Mukuru, our great ancestors, indeed, to make ourselves worthy in this season of Africa Liberation Day of being called freedom fighters, those who have been summoned, those who have been called forward by the spirits of our ancestors, those who have been called forward by the spirits of our children yet unborn, to stand up, fight back for the total liberation of our people, the glory of our Creator and our ancestors, and the attainment of a much higher quality of human existence, or shall we say African human existence. Let us chant one more time, Rumbidzo Kunamwariye Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari, Tendai Mwari. I wonder if you could introduce for us today, Brother Leader Bandaka, what the topic of conversation is going to be.
Yes, and I bring greetings. Let me just also bring greetings from the Al-Kebulan Revivalist Movement, of which I am blessed to be its spiritual leader. We are a liberation movement that is based on an African-centered spiritual cultural philosophy called Al-Kebulan Livity, which simply means living according to the divine teachings and traditions of our mother culture. We also adhere to the nationalist Pan-Africanist philosophy of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and his spirit and his queens, Queen Mama Amy Jakes and Queen Mama Amy Garvey, and as well his spirit and mission child, the eminent prophet and king, Papa Omowale Malcolm X, and his queen, Queen Mama Betty Shabazz. In their names we come this evening, beloved brothers and sisters. In their name we bring the message to you, putting the liberation back into Africa Day. And when I get the instruction from our beloved sister, Sister Shanice, I am ready to roll. Tendai Mwari.
Okay, Tendai Mwari, thank you so much. You know, Brother Leader Bandaka, my computer's running so slow in the background. The plan was to be, you know, firing off some information while you're introducing yourself, but it's so slow, I haven't had the chance to do so. But nevertheless, you know, we will press ahead, because as always, I know there is just so much for us to learn, you know, from your wisdom and from the knowledge that you have. And we thank you so, so much for being a friend of this particular platform. You have brought a wealth of knowledge and information to us. You take the time out to serve our community, and you do it selflessly, and we honor you and we respect you for that, you know, our elder. We do not take you for granted to have someone of your caliber during our lifetime, you know, who we can look to, who we can turn to for knowledge, you know, at a very in-depth and broad perspective of the issues that are affecting us. Someone who can, you know, analyze and critique issues from an African-centered perspective, the way you do, you know, and in a simplified way as well, so that we can all understand it as well, you know. So you bring that high scholarly, you know, aptitude to a small, you know, local level, so that we can all understand it. And we love and appreciate you for that, our brother leader. And so without further ado, we are honored and we are privileged to have you, my brother, as the leader of the Al-Kabalan Revivalist movement, and also as a member of the Galaxy Afiwi radio team, you know. And at some point I will post a link in the chat so that those who want to connect with you can connect with you, because I know there are those out there who may want to connect with our brother leader Bandaka. So I'll put the link to your show in the chat so that the family members will be able to do so. But without further ado, I'd like to hand over the platform to our beloved leader Bandaka. Go ahead, leader.
Atendamwari. Be thankful unto God. Be thankful unto the Creator. I must say, my beloved sister Shanice, I am humbled and blessed by your very kind words. More so because I know it comes from a very, very genuine place. And I just pray that Mwari Nyakusika, God, the creator of the universe, will bless my mind and my tongue and my soul this evening, so that the words I bring to our people will be meaningful, it will be effective, and it will be enlightening. Most importantly, I hope that it will inspire us to rise to the call. Every single one of us have a calling in this universal, this global fight for our people's total liberation. We all have our special qualities and our special skills that we bring to this liberation fight. We just need to hear the call and answer the call, beloved brothers and sisters, and to the best of our ability, give of ourselves, give of our skills, give of our human qualities and potentialities to the upliftment, empowerment, and liberation of our people. Now, as we move forward, I need to bring up my, I'm looking for some assistance here, so we can bring up my PowerPoint so that we can have some visual effects as we move forward in this important topic, putting
screen share,
the liberation back into Africa Day. Beloved brothers and sisters, tomorrow, being the 25th of May, is Africa Liberation Day. Africa Liberation Day was founded in 1963 by the Organization of African Unity. On the African continent, 32 African nations gathered, 32 recently, or 30 of them recently gaining their independence, had a gathering in Addis Ababa, where the 25th of May was established as Africa Liberation Day. So here's our subject, brothers and sisters. Here's our subject: putting the Liberation Back into Africa Day. We say uhuru. Uhuru means freedom. It is a Kiswahili word that means freedom. And it was popularized during the revolutionary 60s as a result of inspiration that our people gained worldwide from the so-called Mau Mau movement in Kenya. But the Mau Mau movement did not call themselves Mau Mau. They called themselves the Land and Freedom Army. The Europeans or the British heard them chanting Uma, 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 and they missed the first U and heard Mau Mau. Uma, Uma, Uma means get out, get out, get out. As they were fighting, as they were demonstrating, they were demanding that the British get out of Kenya. And the British misheard Uma, 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 and heard Mau, 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 and called them the Mau Mau. So we, beloved brothers and sisters, because we understand the power of defining time and space and circumstances, we have now taken to referring to the 5th month of the year, no longer as May, but as Uhuru, the month of Uhuru. So this is a month of Uhuru in the year 62-63, not 2023. I hope not to confuse anyone, but simply because we updated, not invented, not created, updated a calendar, a solar calendar, that many years ago. So it's important that we understand that according to that calendar and that chronology, we are 6,263 years old, according to that calendar. That is not the entirety of our existence and evolution, brothers and sisters, but just since the updating of that particular calendar. So, putting the liberation back into Africa Liberation Day. We want to raise three questions this evening. First of all, to say that in 2002, the newly formed the newly formed African Union that had disbanded the former Organization of African Unity and formulated the new African Union, renamed Africa Liberation Day, Africa Day. So they took the liberation out of the day. And there are many of us as freedom fighters, many of us as liberationists, revolutionaries, question why the word liberation was taken out of Africa Liberation Day. So this evening we ask the question, what is liberation? Number one. Number two, is Africa liberated? And number three, why must we all observe Africa Liberation Day? Why must we all? Emphasizing the must. We have a duty and we have a responsibility to observe Africa Liberation Day. We are submitting this evening that that is a responsibility and a duty for all of us to observe Africa Liberation Day. What is power? What is liberation? What is liberation? That's our first question. The word liberation for us as African people means harnessing the power to be the masters of our own destiny, which is to say to have complete control over every aspect of our lives with the capacity or exercising the capacity to define, defend, and develop our own interests and thus determine our own destiny. Let me just repeat that, brothers and sisters, putting the emphasis where we need to. Liberation is harnessing the power, note that word power, the power to be the masters of our own destiny, which is to say, to have complete control over our every aspect of our lives, with the capacity or exercising the capacity to define, defend, develop our own interests, and thus to determine our own destiny. When we talk about harnessing the power, acquiring the power, what do we mean by power? Well, power is the capacity to effect your will. When you have the capacity to effect your will, you have power. When you don't have the capacity to effect your will, you have no power. In other words, if you will or you desire something to come into being, the ability to make it happen is the manifestation of the power that you have exercised, or the power you have at your disposal. If you cannot bring it into being, then you do not possess the power, and it suggests that there is something that is interrupting the process of you exercising your natural God-given, your natural Mwari-given power. The power to be the masters of our own destiny. Mastery means we have autonomy. Mastery means we have command, beloved brothers and sisters. When you are a master, you answer to no one. When you are a master, you bow to no one, beloved brothers and sisters. When you are a master, you are in charge. You are in control of time and space and destiny. You are in control. You determine circumstances when you are a master, brothers and sisters. But you have to have power to be a master. A master instructs, a master steers, a master directs, brothers and sisters. Who are the masters? We are our own masters. The most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, demonstrated to us what mastery really means. He demonstrated that to us. And in so doing, woke up that sense of mastery in us, that natural sense of mastery in us that had temporarily gone to sleep. And as a result of that, we organize millions of people around the world, thousands of branches around the world, every continent on the planet, without internet, without email and she-mail and whatever else they have today. The most eminent prophet and king, under his inspiration, masterly inspiration, beloved brothers and sisters, had us purchasing ships and putting ships on the sea, had us building industries, manufacturing industries, making our own clothes, making our own hats, making our own shoes, making our own dolls, black dolls for our black children, throwing away the white dolls. Mastery, mastery over our lives, mastery over our destiny. That's what he was about. It wasn't a talking shop. He made things happen. He made things happen. And only then, beloved brothers and sisters, can we define and defend. Those words are important, defining. We have to define our realities, define ourselves, and define our identity, define our worldview, define who our enemies are. And we have to defend our space. We have to defend our property. We have to defend our own lives. We have to defend our children, our elders. And that which we define, that which we defend, we have to also be able to develop. That's what liberation really is about. Determining our own destiny. Being the makers of history. Not just being made by history, somebody else's crafting of human behavior, human interactions. No, we are the craftsmen and women ourselves. That's liberation. That's liberation. Are you all with me? As we move forward, beloved brothers and sisters, we have to spend a few minutes on this liberation. I hope you're feeling it, beloved.
And I'm worried. Absolutely.
Blessed, blessed. It's great to be on Sister Shanice's show. I tell you, I always look forward to coming here, beloved brothers and sisters. And it's always a blessing and an honor. So please forgive me if I seem a bit fired up.
Hey, we love the fire. We love the fire, brother leader. I want that fire to catch everybody that watched this show. Let them catch the fire.
Absolutely.
Yes, leader.
Make the fire burn. Make the fire burn.
Ashe.
So, beloved brothers and sisters, Africa Liberation Day. How did Africa Liberation Day come about? Hold on, one second.
That's okay, no problem.
Beloved brothers and sisters, Africa Liberation Day, the precursor to Africa Liberation Day is Africa Freedom Day, which was established in 1958, when the Osachifo Kwame Nkrumah called a conference of the newly independent African nations, which included, as you see here, Egypt, Ghana, Ethiopia, Liberia, Libya, Morocco, Sudan, Tunisia, and the union of the people of the Cameroons. The purpose was to mark each year as the onward progress of the liberation movement, to symbolize the determination of the people of Africa. This event, beloved brothers and sisters, was commemorated, this Africa Freedom Day was commemorated annually until the calling of Africa, of the Organization of African Union, the founding of the Organization of African Union, sorry. The Organization, the Organization of African Unity, all right? All this union and unity, brothers and sisters. The Organization of African Unity. Now, the Organization of African Unity was established on the 25th day of Uhuru, so-called May, in 1963. And this was the charter. These were the purposes of the Organization of African Unity that was laid out in its charter. And it says, the organization shall have the following purposes: to promote the unity and solidarity of African states, to coordinate and intensify their cooperation and efforts to achieve a better life for the people of Africa, to defend their sovereignty, their territorial integrity and independence, to eradicate all forms of colonialism from Africa, and to promote international cooperation having due regard to the Charter of the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it goes on. To these ends, the member states shall coordinate and harmonize their general policies, especially in the following fields: political and diplomatic cooperation, economic cooperation, including transport and communication, educational and cultural cooperation, health, sanitation and nutritional cooperation, scientific and technological cooperation, and cooperation for defense and security. This was the charter, the purposes laid out in the charter on the inauguration of the Organization of African Unity. Now, we should know, beloved brothers and sisters, that the Organization of African Unity came about following a 2-year period where there was a split in 2 blocks on the African continent, 2 blocks of independent African nations, which had two diametrically opposed ideas and approaches to how we should go about liberating the African continent. One bloc was called the Casablanca bloc. The name was taken from the capital of Morocco, and it was led by Kwame Nkrumah. He wanted, the Casablanca bloc was advocating that the African continent should organize itself into a federation of states with one central continental government, which meant that the borders, the colonial borders that had been imposed on the African continent would have to be removed. They were the progressive, in our humble opinion. They were the progressive bloc. The other bloc, the Monrovia bloc, taken from the name of the capital of Liberia, still Monrovia, taken from a USA President, James Monroe, Monrovia. The Monrovia bloc, led by William Tubman of Liberia, opposed political federation and felt that unity should be achieved gradually through economic cooperation. These were the nations of the Casablanca bloc: Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, and Libya. You will see there that 4 of the 7 nations were Arab nations, that the African nations who signed up to the Casablanca bloc that was vying for a federation of African states across the African continent, the removal of these artificial borders, with only 3 African nations. 3 nations led and predominated by African people. The Monrovia bloc, as we can see here, brothers and sisters, had Nigeria, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Somalia, Togo, Tunisia, Congo, Cameroon, Congo-Brazzaville, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Gabon, Burkina Faso, Madagascar, Mauritania, Niger, the Central African Republic, Senegal, Chad. There were about 22 nations that were involved. Now, a acrimonious conflict occurred or evolved as a result of the contradictions of the 2 positions. It got potentially pretty nasty. And there was a tendency to want to isolate the Osage for Kwame Nkrumah, because he was the driving force. He was the leading force behind the vision of a federation of African states, a union of African states. So, beloved brothers and sisters, these were the Casablanca heads of state, the African heads of state: Osage for Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, and Modibo Keïta. Secretary of Guinea, Modibo Keita of Mali. These were the three leading forces in the Monrovia bloc: Leopold Senghor, William Tubman, and Felix Houphouët-Boigny. And so in stepped the emperor, His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I, who tried to weather the storm that was brewing between the two conflicting groups, and to try and bring about a synthesis, try and bring about a process of resolution and harmony and a middle ground going forward. So he called a conference in Addis Ababa to forge unity and cooperation between the Casablanca and Monrovia bloc. And that's when the Organization of African Unity was founded. Now, at that conference, before we come to that, beloved brothers and sisters, before we come to the next slide, at that conference, the Osagyefo for Kwame Nkrumah, that blessed soul, that powerful African king who was sent among us to do a special work, that great African leader, that visionary who said that he read so many books, Marx, Engels, Hegel, Mazzini, and he named some others. He said, but all the books he read, nothing fired his enthusiasm more than when he read Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. He was inspired by the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. The idea of a union of African states was inspired by the vision of the most eminent prophet and king. And he made us a passionate speech at this inaugural OAU gathering, or the formation of the OAU. I'm going to struggle with this because the light in here is not great and my text is not great. But I want us, brothers and sisters, to hear his words. If you just bring this down for me, please, that would help. But 1 second, beloved. I want us to hear the Osagyefo's passionate words. And Osagyefo is a title that means redeemer. So he came to redeem. He came to redeem our situation, brothers and sisters, our desperate situation. And he made a desperate appeal to the conference. He said, I have spoken at some length, Your Excellencies, because it is necessary for us all to explain not only to one another present here, but also to our people who have entrusted us with the fate and destiny of Africa. We must therefore not leave this place until we have set up an effective machinery for the achievement of African unity. To this end, I now propose for you, for your consideration, the following. As a first step, Your Excellencies, a declaration of principle uniting and binding us together, and to which we must all faithfully and loyally adhere, and laying out the foundation of unity should be set down. And there should also be a formal declaration that all the independent African states here and now agree to establish to the establishment of a union of African states. Listen carefully, brothers and sisters. He was passionate as he delivered this, as he pleaded to the other leaders at the conference, as a second and urgent step for the realization of the unification of Africa and all Africa Committee of Foreign Ministers be set up now. And he stressed the now. That before we rise from this conference, a day should be fixed for us. Sorry, a day should be fixed for them to meet. This committee should establish on behalf of the heads of our governments a permanent body of officials and experts to work out. Sorry, let me just bring up the Osage picture here. I'm not reading that at the moment. We haven't come to that yet, beloved. But I just want us to see his face as I read this. Yeah, I'm not reading that. We'll come to that in a minute. Okay. The committee should establish on behalf of the heads of governments a permanent body of officials and experts to work out a machinery for the Union Government of Africa. Work out a machinery for the Union Government of Africa. This body of officials and experts should be made up of the best brains from each independent African state. Did you hear that, brothers and sisters? The best brains. He's calling on the best brains to lay out this machinery for the Union Government of Africa. The various charters of the existing groupings and other relevant documents could also be submitted to the officials and experts. We must also decide on allocation where this body of officials and experts will work as the new headquarters or capital of the Union government. Some central place in Africa might be the fairest suggestion, either at Bangui in the Central African Republic or Leopoldville in the Congo. So he's saying perhaps the headquarters, the place of work, should be in the central region of the African continent. My colleagues may have other proposals. The Committee of Foreign Ministers, officials, and experts should be empowered to establish, and now we can come to what's on the screen, a commission to frame a constitution for a union government of African states. A commission to work out a continent-wide plan for a unified or common economic and industrial program for Africa. This plan should include proposals for setting up a common market for Africa. Listen, good brothers and sisters, an African currency, an African monetary zone, an African central bank, a continental communication system. 3, a commission to draw up details for a common foreign policy. 4, a commission to produce plans for a common system of defense. That means a union army, an African Union army, a continental army to defend and secure the interests of Africa. 5, a commission to make proposals for common African citizenship, one citizenship across the African continent. Let's just recap on what the Osage was calling for, brothers and sisters, specifically a common market First of all, let me just go to point number 2. A commission to work out a continent-wide plan for a unified and common economic and industrial program for Africa. He wanted the continent to be industrialized. He had already started the process in Ghana. He was rapidly industrializing Ghana. In fact, he had earmarked Britain, which is about the same size as Ghana, 94,000 square miles. Ghana is 92,000 square miles. And he had in his sight to overtake Britain economically, scientifically, and technologically. That was a task that he had set himself, just Ghana alone. But then he had a vision for Africa, that Africa would be the #1 super state on the planet within a generation. But it required all African nations to unite under one union government, working towards one economic program, which was going to be based on industrialization, agriculture and industrialization, manufacturing our own goods, adding value to our natural resources, was the vision of the Osagyefo. A common market for Africa, a single African currency, an African monetary zone, one monetary system. We have all these multiple monetary systems across the African continent. Not one of the currencies worth anything. You can't even use one currency in another African country because we don't even want our brothers and sisters' currency. It ain't worth nothing. You have to convert it into dollars or sterling to move from one African nation to another African nation and spend some money. Nobody's impressed. You bring a Kenyan shilling or a Ghana CD. Nobody interested. But if we had one single currency with a continental-wide economic system, with a competitive GDP, then the currency would be worth something in the world. Everybody would want African currency. Because we have the natural resources that everybody covets. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. If Africans control, for God's sake, if Africans control Africa, Africans will rule the world. And everybody else knows that except us. So everyone is vying for control of Africa. And we are surrendering our God-given wealth, our God-given blessing under the earth. We're squandering it. We're giving it away like some Santa Claus, some demented Santa Claus. One African central bank. I have to repeat it. One continental communication system right across. Just imagine if we had that today, right across. Transport and communication system right across the African continent. How powerful would that be today? That was the vision of this man. That was the vision of this man. A commission to draw up details for the common foreign policy and diplomacy. By the way, this is accessible. I've got the full speech here, brothers and sisters. It's accessible online. And there's also an audio. The audio doesn't have the full speech, but it's good to listen to the audio as well, beloved brothers and sisters, to hear his voice, beautiful voice of the Osagyefo. A commission to produce, this is so important, plans for a common system of defense. We're defenseless on the African continent today, trust me. We are defenseless. All them little poodles that them have, they call army. Little Mickey Mouse operation, what them have called army. We're trained by Africom and trained by the French and all that nonsense. Who are the Americans going to train us to whose interests are they going to train us to defend? Whose interests are the French going to train us to defend? Whose interests are the Russians going to train us to defend? Our interests. Moving swiftly on, beloved brothers and sisters. The Osage knew what Africa's wealth and power potential was, and he tried to get other African leaders to understand that we are the most powerful people on the planet, that our motherland, our continent, was the richest and most powerful piece of real estate on the planet. We, beloved brothers and sisters, are 17% of the world's population. Some 1.4 billion is the population of the African continent itself. But when you include the diaspora, and that's 17%, but when you include the diaspora, we are some 32%, because we are roughly 2.5 billion in the world. So we are some 32%, 1/3 of the world's population. And there's room for every single one of us on the African continent. There is room. I'm talking about room with plenty of wiggle room left. Plenty of space. Africa is grossly underpopulated. Let me tell you, Africa is the least populated continent on the planet in terms of its land mass and its people. We are 60% of the world's most arable land. 60% of the world's most arable land. We have it. Nearly 10% of the global oil output. Not the global oil reserves, the global oil output. There's more oil on the African continent than in the so-called Middle East. Let me tell you that. There's oil all over Africa. That's why they don't want us to industrialize. Because amongst other things, we will be refining our own oil and putting our own oil to use. And that's why we have to be very careful with them and them, what they call it, their climate change propaganda. We need to look critically at that. Because one of the things we know historically is that they did everything to prevent Africa from industrializing. And this climate change propaganda is, amongst other things, designed to prevent the African continent from industrializing. Why is China so powerful in the world today? Because China industrialized. China closed its boundaries, locked off from everybody else, and got on with its own business. It industrialized. And then it opened its markets. But it had a strong political foundation, a strong government to protect the interests of its nation, to protect its national interests. 90% of the world's platinum is in Africa. 90% of the world's cobalt. No cobalt, no jet engine. No cobalt, no fancy electric cars. Much of the modern technology, beloved brothers and sisters, we see today, including the lithium battery, cannot be produced without cobalt. That's the key ingredient is our cobalt. That our children are dying in cobalt mines to mine for them. Children as young as 5 and 6 are dying in mines. 50% of the world's gold supply, 66% of the world's manganese, 35% of the world's uranium, 75% of the world's coltan. No coltan, no mobile phone, no coltan, no flat screen TV. 50% of the world's diamonds. And look at all of these other resources, these other natural minerals and resources that we have, rubber, copper, bauxite, palm oil, you name it, brothers and sisters, in abundance across the African continent. The Osagefo knew what was under the African soil. And he knew that all we needed was a competent continental union government to protect and preserve it, to serve the interests of Africa first and foremost, and to have a union, continental union army to defend and protect that. This is what he wanted to protect. This is what he wanted to defend. That was what his speech that he delivered at that inaugural OAU conference was all about. But what was the decision of the majority of the delegates at the OAU? They voted against the vision of a federation, a union of African states. It pains me every time I think about it. They voted in favor of some nebulous thing called economic and political cooperation instead of a solid political union, solid economic union, a solid cultural union. They voted, brothers and sisters, emphatically against a common system of defense and a common citizenship. They voted against that. And they voted in favor of something called a non-interventionist policy. That means if I abusing my populace here, you can't do anything about it. That's what that meant. And what this Osagefo wanted was a union army that could protect the interests of Africans even against corrupt Africans in any part of the African continent moving forward. And so we put in the liberation back in Africa Liberation Day, just to remind you, brothers and sisters. In 2002, between 1999 and 2002, the African Union was formed, and the Organization of African Union, the Organization of African Unity was disbanded. This call for this transformation, this change, was led by an Arab named Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. I won't say too much, but except I have said on Sister Shanice's show before, and I will say it again. Colonel Gaddafi was not a Pan-Africanist. To be a Pan-Africanist, the first criteria and the fundamental criteria is that you must be an African. Colonel Gaddafi was an Arab expansionist. He believed in Pan-Arabism. He believed in Arab expansionism. That was his passion. And he knew that he could exploit the African continent to create a power base, because he was not accepted as the supremo he wanted to be in the Arab world. And so he was going to use Africa to generate the power that he needed in order to make the advances that he wanted to make in the Arab world. I'll leave that there, because I've spoken on Sister Shanice's show before about Gaddafi, and it will come around again. It was in the formation of the African Union that the word liberation was taken out of Africa Liberation Day and was called Africa Day instead, as if we were liberated. So we ask the question, is Africa liberated? Is Africa liberated? Since the OAU 1963, since the OAU's woeful decision in 1963, Africa has suffered endless coups, counter coups, perennial conflicts, and Cold War flashpoints. Is Africa liberated? Nigeria a series of bloody coups from 1966 on into the 80s, beloved brothers and sisters. Is that liberation? Manipulated by external forces, Britain, America, France, were always involved in Africa, especially Britain and America, were always involved in Nigeria and Nigeria's conflicts. And I have a presentation on Nigeria, beloved brothers and sisters, on Sister Shanice's show. Ghana, the toppling of Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah on the 24th of February 1966. That was a massive setback, not just for Africans on the continent of Africa, but for Africans around the world. Do you know that under the Osagyefo, Africans were traveling from around the world, from the Americas, from the Caribbean, from Europe, traveling to Ghana, revolutionary Ghana, to experience the revolution that was taking place, the revolution that was just being born, the transformation that was taking place in Ghana. We just heard the news that the Queen of Rock, as they call her, Tina Turner, passed away today. She, I know, and her then husband, Ike Turner, did travel to Ghana and spent some time there as well. The Papa Omowale Malcolm X traveled to Ghana and other parts of Africa. Africans were encouraged not only to travel to Ghana, but other parts of the African continent because of the Pan-African vision of the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, what it inspired in them. The tremendous work and the vision of the Osagyefo that was unfolding in Ghana, and that provided a beacon light for the rest of the African continent. That light was snuffed out at the twinkle of an eye on the 24th of February. It set back Africa and Africans hundreds of years, beloved brothers and sisters. We can't even begin to understand what damage was done to the African world when the Osagyefo was toppled. You had the Nigeria-Biafra War. Listen, beloved brothers and sisters, is Africa liberated? Was the toppling of the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, was that liberation? Was the Biafra War, 1957 to 1970, that killed 1 to 2 million of our people? Was that liberation? Was the coup that toppled Modibo Keita in Mali in November 1968, that imprisoned him and had him in prison until 1977 when he died in prison? Was that liberation? Sorry, beloved. Was it liberation when the great Alphonse Mesamba Deba was toppled in Congo Brazzaville? There are two countries called the Congo. There's the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is the one in the central region, the bigger Congo, and then there's a smaller one to the left of the map, the smaller one called the Republic of Congo, or otherwise known as Congo Brazzaville, which is the capital. The Brazzaville is the capital. And they had a Pan-African leader, a good Pan-African leader. He was also toppled in 1968, imprisoned as well, and died the same year as Modibo Keita. Is that liberation, beloved brothers and sisters? Is that liberation? And all of these coups on the African continent, beloved, all of these coups are influenced, sponsored even, directed by external colonial forces. That's what we must remember, beloved brothers and sisters. That's what we must remember. And that is why we have to be critical about the present leadership and political system that we have on the African continent. The ongoing crisis in the Congo, beloved brothers and sisters, the ongoing crisis in the Congo, the original Congo crisis between 1960 and 1965, when 95,000 African people lost their lives. Was that liberation? The assassination of the Lumumbist revolutionary Pierre Mulele in October 1968. Was that liberation? He was trying to revive Lumumba's vision after Lumumba was so viciously and brutally assassinated in January 1961. Pierre Mulele was a young man in his 30s, a teacher who became Minister of Education under Lumumba, who refused to accept the manner in which Lumumba was murdered, and launched a revolution where they had recaptured nearly half of the Congo. And then external forces began to support the Mobutu regime and crushed the revolution. Is that liberation? The assassination, brothers and sisters, of Tom Mboya of Kenya in July 1969, was that liberation? The assassination of Amilcar Cabral. He was another great visionary that we don't know enough about. Amilcar Cabral, 1973, gunned down by Innocent Sekani, one of his right-hand men. Beloved brothers and sisters, where have you heard that story before? Was that liberation? The Angola War, 1975 to 2002, that the South Africans were supporting UNITA and the Americans were supporting UNITA against the MPLA. 500,000 of our people died in that war, beloved, in that crisis, beloved brothers and sisters. Was that liberation? We have to call it out. This is what has been happening, beloved brothers and sisters, after, if we had a Continental Union Army, a revolutionary Continental Union Army, could this have happened? Could these atrocities have happened on the African continent? No, no, because the Osagyefo, the visionary, knew that that is exactly, and told them in the speech, that's exactly what would happen if we did not unite across the African continent. They would pick us off one by one. What about the assassination of Samora Machel in a plane crash of Mozambique, October 1986? The assassination of Thomas Sankara, October 1987 in Burkina Faso. The Liberian War, 1987 to 1997, beloved brothers and sisters. That was the Civil War, Liberian Civil War, the first Civil War, and then the second Civil War, which was 1999 to 2003. 250,000 of our children, men, women, and babies, children died in that war. Was that liberation? That's what the Osagyefo knew would happen. And all of these are manipulated by external forces. What about the Sierra Leonean War? 1991 to Civil War, 1991 to 2002. Death toll, 50,000 death toll. Rwanda, we all know about the Rwanda genocide or the Rwanda Civil War. 500,000 to 1 million. They can't even be sure how many people died, but if it was 500,000, that's 500,000 people. That's 500,000. Add all of these up, beloved brothers and sisters. We have the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Civil War, 1996 to 1997, the first Civil War, and then 1998 to 2003. million, 6 million of our flesh and blood died in those wars. Think about it, beloved brothers and sisters. Think about the Sudan and Darfur, the Darfur massacre. Beloved, between 2003 and 2020, 100,000 to 500,000 of our people, women raped, children abused. Is that liberation? Why are we removing liberation from Africa Liberation Day? How does it become Africa Day? As if we liberated. Assassination of John Garang. John Garang, who tried to keep the Sudan united, who did not want a split in the Sudan, tried to work out an accommodation with the Arabized Africans of the North. He went in an helicopter to a conference in Uganda and the helicopter went down, just like Samora Machel's helicopter went down. Is that liberation? Is Africa liberated, beloved brothers and sisters? Let's look at the assassination of, oh, we've done that already. Let's move on. Moreover, brothers and sisters, the rampant theft of African land and natural resources, 90% of Africa's natural resources are expropriated by foreign forces. You wonder why poverty is so rampant on the African continent? If 90% of our natural resources are being stolen by external forces, leaving us 10% for the entire African continent, the majority of our people are going to be in abject poverty. Moving swiftly on. Life expectancy. Let's do an analysis, a global analysis. Life expectancy globally is now 74 years. In Africa, it's 56 years. In the EU, it's 80 years. UK is 86 years. USA is 80 years. China is 77 years. South America is 76.5 years. All of these leading nations and regions that are enjoying longevity are enjoying it on the exploitation of Africa and Africans. And our short life expectancy, beloved brothers and sisters, is precisely predicated on our lack of our loss of control over our own land and our own natural resources and the means of production of goods and services to meet our own wants and to meet our own needs. Further analysis, let's look at the median age of the African continent compared with the global context. Globally, the median age is 31. That means half the population is below 31 years, half the population is above 31 years. Africa's is 19. The EU is 44. The UK is 41, call it. The US is 38. China's is not there. I'm trying to remember. I think China is somewhere similar to the USA. 37, 38, somewhere around there. South America, 32 years. Now, we talk about Africa's median age as if it is an asset. And of course, young people are always an asset. But we have to ask ourselves, why is it that our median age is so much younger than the rest of the world? The answer is our life expectancy is so short. That is the reason. And we need to understand this. It's a problem because the young people need the wisdom and the experience of their elders to bring them through. The elders are dying too young. All of that wisdom is going in the grave and going in the grave too early. The grandmothers, the grandfathers, the great-grandmothers, the great-grandfathers, the old retired teachers who can train new teachers, who have time and experience, they're dying young. So it is not overall to our advantage that we have such a young population on the African continent. It means we're dying too young. Poverty rate. Globally, there are 7 to 8 million people, which is 10% roughly of the global population, who are in what they call extreme poverty. EP there is extreme poverty. You have relative poverty and extreme poverty. Relative poverty is when your income is, say, half of the national average, and you struggle to make ends meet. You're having it really, really tough, but you're not on the verge of malnutrition and dying or whatever it is. And when we look at poverty, what we have to remember is that poverty is also relative to the services, social services, health services, educational services that are available or not available in a particular country. So it's not only related to income, but it's also related to services that are accessible. So in many of these places where we talk about, where we see these figures of poverty in, for example, in the USA, in the UK, in the EU, most of that is relative poverty as opposed to extreme or absolute poverty. Absolute poverty is when you have no income, or you're on $1 a day or $2 a day, right? Which can barely feed you and your children. That is extreme poverty. Extreme poverty is when you're living in a cardboard box. That if rain comes, it soaks you and your children, and half the family die from pneumonia. That's extreme poverty. Extreme poverty is suffering from malnutrition. And that's the reality right across the African continent. 490 million people on the African continent. 35% of our people are facing extreme poverty. Is that liberation? Is Africa liberated? Is Africa liberated? I'm not here to be the bearer of doom. I'm not a doomsayer, brothers and sisters. In fact, I'm more an optimist than I am a pessimist. But more than anything else, I have to be a realist. I have to be realistic. I have to say it like it is. Africa, as in the words of Baba John Henry Clark, is under siege and has been for 500 years. Still is. Let's look at these statistics. This is what they call the Human Development Index. It is a measurement of living standard as it relates to income or economic well-being, health, and what's the other one? Income, health. The third one will come to me. Income, health. It'll come back to me in a moment. And these brothers and sisters, here you have the 10 highest. There are 4 categories on the Human Development Index. the United Nations Human Development Index. 4 categories. Very high, high, medium, and low. There are about 40 nations in the low category. At least 34 or 33 or 34 of them are from the African continent. The 10 highest, look at them: Switzerland, Norway, Iceland. Look at their figures. Hong Kong, Australia, all but one is a European country. Look at the lowest, the 10 lowest, all but one, Yemen. The 10 lowest, all but one is in Africa. Is Africa liberated? Look at these miscellaneous brothers and sisters. French neocolonial strangulation of 14 African states. The French, as we speak, are fleecing African nations of 500 billion pounds a year. That's $500 billion. And they've been doing it for decades. There was a ridiculous economic structural adjustment program that was used to ravage African economies. Destroyed African economies, beloved brothers and sisters. It's ridiculous. IMF and World Bank. When Papa Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah was calling for a an African central bank, it was to avoid all of this foolishness. A single monetary zone, a single African currency. African. How can we have our enslavers? Look at the battles that Africans in America fought for their dignity. They murdered our leaders in the United States of America to stop us from even acquiring civil rights, basic human rights. They killed Malcolm X. They killed Martin Luther King Jr. They killed Medgar Evers. They killed Fred Hampton and Mark Clark of the Black Panther Party. Bobby Hutton, 17 years of age, they blew his brains out while he was stripped naked, standing in the street with his back turned. They blew his brains out, 17 years old. And we have them training our armies. 35 countries across the African continent. Is Africa liberated? Then we have terrorism. Al-Qaeda run rampage all over Africa, according to them. Tuareg, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, the whole of them. And them are control the whole of them. Is Africa liberated? Why did we take the liberation out of Africa Liberation Day? Why is it now Africa Day and not Africa Liberation Day? Are we free? Are we harnessing the power to be the masters of our own destiny? Are we assuming mastery over our own destiny? That's what the Osagyefo was calling for. And these stool pigeon puppets did not understand it. They couldn't see the vision. They didn't know it. They didn't understand it. Because they're puppets. All they can do is open their mouths as talking heads for their ventriloquists to speak through them. They have no ideas of their own. Their brains don't work like normal human beings' brains. They can't think for themselves. The globalist Tony Blair. Tony Blair and his Institute of Global whatever it name. running 15 countries in Africa. I say running 15 countries, supposedly an advisor. No, he's running these countries, let me tell you that. How can we have Tony Blair, even as an advisor? What is he going to advise? This liar, this pathological liar, huh? Who was disgraced in his own country, exposed, read the Chilcot report, exposed in his own country. Their rubbish becomes our jewel. That's our mindset. What them dash what we pick up. Tony Blair is completely unpopular in this country. But he is the tool of the establishment. He's a globalist, an aggressive globalist at that. And he's there to push the globalist agenda. Their one world government agenda. He's there to do that. He's there for that purpose. That's what they pay him millions for. Then there's the Arab question, the Arab domination brutality of Africans. We saw what happened in Morocco and Algeria recently. Let me move quickly now to the close, beloved brothers and sisters. And recent proxy wars, again, all over the African continent. Sudan, recent vicious war in Sudan, rapidly taking the lives of our people. South Sudan conflict, Ethiopia, and there's tensions from time to time between South Sudan and Sudan over oil. And then you have Ethiopia recently, and the Tigray attack on the Ethiopian government backed by America. That's the Tigray Liberation Front. The Tigray People's Liberation Front, I'm saying, was backed by the United States of America, up against the Ethiopian government. Somalia, Central African Republic, Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, they're all in turmoil. Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon with the Ambazonia conflict, where you have a group of Africans who talk English, want to break away from the group of Africans who talk French and have the backing of the British. And I'm not saying that they don't have some justifiable grievance, but we have to look at the external forces that are manipulating the conflict. Tensions between Arab Egypt, also in Ethiopia, over the dam that Ethiopia is building. And so it goes on and on and on. Why, beloved brothers and sisters? Why should we, the third and final question, I'll be very brief on this. Why should we celebrate Africa Liberation Day? Why should we observe Africa Liberation Day? Well, clearly, because we are not liberated. There is a liberation fight to fight. My focus this evening was on the African continent, but there are reflections of the crises and the challenges of Africa throughout the African world, because the policy that the global white supremacists, their policy for Africa is their policy for Africans around the world. Africa Liberation Day gives us an opportunity to come together, to first of all, beloved brothers and sisters, realize that we are still in a fight for our people's total liberation. And then it gives us an opportunity to commemorate all of the battles that have gone before us, all of the great freedom fighters and those who were martyred in the cause of our liberation, to remember them, to remember the victories that we secured, and how we gained those victories. We have to commemorate that. We have to study them so we learn of how we accomplish that so we can do it again. But we also, in the commemoration, we also lament our losses. We also lament our pains. We also, we also look at the errors that we made so that we can correct those errors. So that's commemoration. We also evaluate. We commemorate. We evaluate. We look at where we are today. What have we done with the victories of the past? Have we capitalized on those victories? Have we vindicated our martyrs? Have we vindicated the blood that has been shed for our liberation? Have we taught it to our children? Africa Liberation Day gives us an opportunity to do that, to evaluate where we are now, where there are examples, good examples of revolutionary or liberationist work being done on the African continent and in the African diaspora. And then, perhaps most importantly, as important as the previous aspects are, the remembrance, the evaluation, remembrance of the past, evaluation of the present. But most importantly, it's how we harness the knowledge of the past and the analyses that we make of the present to shape the future. So how do we organize in the present so that we can shape a brighter and better future for our people? How do we plan going forward? And if the Osagyfo's message to the OAU in 1963, the 25th of May, that's a sacred day for us in the Al-Qaeda Revivalist Movement. Let me tell you this. So no matter what's going on the weekend, we in the Al-Qaeda Revivalist Movement, we always take time off work and study, except if someone has an exam, and we gather for our observance, because this day is sacred. Talk about defining time and space. We have to define what is sacred to us. And if Africans gathered from across the continent and pronounced upon the date, the 25th of Uhuru, and said, this is Africa Liberation Day, then 1,000 years from now, 1,000 years from now, we should be upholding Africa Liberation Day. You saw that character and that charade that went on a few weeks ago with this man, them called Charles III, being inaugurated. And they were boasting 1,000 years of unbroken monarchy. 1,000 years. We can't even uphold something for 5 years. We've got to fix that, brothers and sisters. So Africa Liberation Day is sacred. Africa Liberation Day is a cultural imperative, and cultural imperatives are compelling events in the African life cycle, which are determined by cultural traditions. We don't dictate to our cultural imperatives dictate to us. So let us all gather in the different halls, the different centers in our community. Let us support the brave organizations and members of organizations that take the time out to put on these important events, whether it's online or face-to-face. Let's give them our support. Let's switch on to these online events. Let's tell the Al-Qaeda Revivalist Movement, we've booked 2 minibuses to go down to Manchester to celebrate Africa Liberation Day with the Pan-African Congress Movement, which we have been doing since the inception of the Al-Qaeda Revivalist Movement. I close, beloved brothers and sisters, with the words of the most eminent prophet and king, as I always do, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Unite, organize now or perish. Rise, you mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will. Rumbidzo kuna mwari ye Afrika, To the God of Africa be the glory. Kanamariada, if it pleases the Creator, I will see you at the Africa Liberation Day events. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari, Tendai Mwari, Tendai Mwari. Wow, wow, wow. As always, you know, Brother Leader Bandaka, you bring the knowledge and the information, you know, to us in such a powerful way. Brother Leader, I wonder if you could take down the presentation, please, and then I'll add myself back somehow to spotlight so that we can be on the screen together. Wow, wow, wow. Another powerful, powerful presentation there by our leader, Bandaka. So there has been so many comments in the chat as you have been delivering your presentation. And one that stood out for me was a brother who said, please, Sister Shanice, let Brother Leader Bandaka know that we appreciate love him. So I just wanted to give you that message first and foremost. You know, Leader Bandaka, as you delivered your presentation,
can I just return that love? Sorry, my sister, sorry to interrupt. Can I just return that love? I just love to express and share and receive love from my people. I just love my people so much. And for you to take that, whoever it is, for you to send those words of love to me, that's a powerful thing. I want you to know it's well received. Love you too. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari. You know, you started today's presentation, Leader Bandaka, by reminding us of the vision that Kwame Nkrumah had, you know, and the warning, you know, that he gave to those newly independent states. And, you know, when he did his speech, you know, and talked about the importance for Africa to unite, to come together as one. And what a visionary, what a vision he had. One currency. We're still talking about that today. You know, one army.
Absolutely.
We need to be talking about that today. You know, pulling together our scientists, you know, communication links from one end of Africa to the other, from the Cape Coast to Cairo. We're still talking about that today. And Kwame Nkrumah had that vision for Africa nearly 60 years ago. And, you know, as you said, the Monrovia group decided that they wanted to take the slow road. They wanted to take the slow approach. Kwame Nkrumah was saying we need to seize the moment. I was reading up on some of the papers earlier as well, Brother Leader, and, you know, he was reminding the meeting that when they first met in, I think it was 1959 or something like that, 58. I think there were about 11 independent African nations. By 1963, there were like 32 independent African nations. So we can see the pace at which independence was actually happening. And, you know, the leaders at that meeting, the vast majority of them, you know, they wanted to maintain that momentum. And certainly, you know, Kwame Nkrumah wanted everyone to maintain, you know, that momentum. So why they chose the slow road, my gosh, we are suffering as a result. And in that presentation as well, Leader, you talked about the number of people who died, you know, as a result of the wars and the coups and the exploitation and everything that's happening to undermine Africa, to stop it from progressing. And of course, you know, with us having now 55 or 56 individual nations, it's so easy, you know, for them now to just to do the dirty work on the African continent. You know, it pains me to think that we had a visionary like Kwame Nkrumah, you know, who set out the vision, who set out the plan, and because of individual selfish gains, they wanted to, you know, maintain the position of leadership over that little part of Africa, to the detriment now to the whole of Africa. Wow, wow, wow. It's so painful. Brother Leader, I wonder if you would bear with me if I just also add a little something that I came across in one of the speeches. There's so many speeches, and people have been asking, where can I get the paper? Where can I get the speeches? Just to let you know that if you just go into Google and search for the OAU 1963 speeches, it will come up. I don't think you need to search for anything other than that, and it will come up. It came up for me. And brother leader, I was, pulling some bits from some of the speeches, and I recommend that everybody reads the speeches. We need to read the speeches. It's the least we can do. Then you will get the picture of where our leaders were at, where our revolutionary leaders were at the time during 1963. And this is just a couple of paragraphs from the speech that was delivered by His Excellency Ahmed Ben Bella, who was the Prime Minister of Algeria at the time. And he said, I stress that Algeria subscribes in advance to all the conditions, to all the reasons, and to all the justifications that the committee will adopt. But he says, it is my duty to say, on behalf of the Algerian people and on behalf of the 1,500,000 martyrs fallen on the field of honor, 1,500,000 fallen soldiers fighting for our liberation, fighting for our freedom, fighting to rid themselves of the yoke of colonialism, family. Yeah, we have subscribed to these religions where, we lament over and we revere an individual, one individual who sacrificed his life. Here we had over 1.5 million of our people who fell on the field fighting for our freedom, and we don't remember them. This day, the 25th of May, every year should be a national holiday for us as Africans, wherever we are in the world, wherever we are. And then he went on to say that, this charter that they'd all signed up to basically will remain a dead letter unless we take concrete decisions, unless we lend unconditional support to the people of Angola, South Africa, Mozambique, and others. Unconditional support. So family, at the time, those countries were still under the yoke of colonialism. And even though those 33 nations were free, here you had, presidents of countries saying that we will not rest until all Africa is free, and we will provide the unconditional support that these countries need in order to rid themselves of the colonialists. And, he goes on, there's so much in the speeches, but it really gives you a kind of feeling of the revolutionary spirit, the spirit that those leaders had at the time, the spirit of oneness, the spirit to ensure that all of Africa was free. Yet there were those, unfortunately, the majority of them being African countries, that decided to take the slow road and not continue with the momentum that, was happening at that time. And let's remember, it was the grassroots people who were putting their lives at risk as well. They were the ones fighting on the ground. They were the ones facing the bullets and whatever other artillery was being aimed at them. Wow. Leader Bandaka, if we could just turn back the clock. I mean, give us a picture of how different things might have been had we gone the Kwame Nkrumah route.
Oh, Tenai, I mean, Africa would be telling a completely different story. Today, I am confident that if we had risen to the vision of the Asajifo, that Africa would be the #1 superpower in the world today. You see where China is in the world today. You see what China is doing for itself in the world today. China does not have the wealth of Africa. China is in Africa now. Because for China to rule the world, as China intends to do, China has to control Africa. Fundamental principle of global geopolitics. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. So China is in Africa. And America, this is why Africa was set up, to protect American interests. America is looking ahead. America sees the progress and the evolution of China in Africa, and the vision that China has for it, the global vision that China has for itself. And America is determined that it will remain the #1 superpower in the world. So, and America today controls Africa. That's why America rules the world. So if we had followed the vision of the Osagifo, it means we would have taken control of Africa, taken control of our African minds, our African institutions. We would have built our African economic institutions, our African financial institutions. We would have built our political institutions. We would have built science and technological institutions. If we look at what the Osagifo was doing in Ghana itself, which, as I said earlier on, was a beacon light that he was seeking to shine across the African continent. So this is what we need to do continentally. I'll start the process. I'll show you it can be done. I'll show you how it can be done. And he was effecting tremendous transformation in Ghana. And that would have eventually manifested itself across the African continent. The other massive blow for Africa, of course, was the assassination, the vicious, savage assassination of Patrice Lumumba. I mean, there's something about Patrice Lumumba. He's just my favorite. You know, my spirit has just taken to him from the first time, 1984. I did some studies of him for the Pan-African Congress movement to produce a paper at one of their African Heroes Day. And I was given Patrice Lumumba to study. I knew nothing about Patrice Lumumba at the time. And I was just so thankful at the end of it. It moved me to tears. When the first time I studied about Patrice Lumumba and picked up the spirit of the man and how brutally he was disposed of, heartlessly. And that letter he wrote to his wife was just too much for me. When I read that, I was just in tears, you know. I take liberation very to heart, and I take it very, very seriously. And even as young as I was then, I realized that this man was crucial to the destiny of our people, not just in Africa, but globally. And they took him out, you know. So, you know, Africa, without a doubt, because that was the vision. Africa today, we wouldn't be talking about China today. We'd be talking about Africa. Everybody would be bowing down to Africans around the world today, but they couldn't see the vision. They couldn't see the vision, and the Osagifo couldn't do it on his own. Or just the Osagifo and Sekou Touré and Modibo Keita and some of the other leaders that came later on just were not in the position at the time. They were not in the position of leadership of heads of government or heads of state at the time. So there just wasn't enough visionaries who had, you know, held positions as heads of state or heads of government. And so he was fighting a losing battle. You know?
And here we are today with all of those really awful statistics that you reeled out. You know, here we are as Africans, you know, impoverished, not because Africa is poor, but because Africa is poorly managed. That's the problem, one of the biggest problems that we have today. Let me bring in some of the comments and contributions from our live audience. Thank you, family. Kwame Oboje says, word, Shanice, every May should be an African Day or an ALD. You even say Africa Day now after this presentation today. We cannot leave the L out of the
Can't leave it out.
Can't leave it out, not a hinge, because we're not liberated yet. Africa
Absolutely.
is not liberated as yet. But absolutely agree with you. You know, every 25th of May ought to be, or every 25th of Uhuru ought to be Africa Liberation Day in all our calendar.
Yeah.
Brother Kwame goes on to say that the great Dedan Kimathi, who stood up against the British demons in our uprising in Kenya, Kenyatta betrayed our people in Kenya.
That's
we
true.
have these betrayals. We have these,
That's
you know,
true.
self-centered ones among us, you know, who sit comfortably in their seat of betrayal.
Word.
I won't say any more there.
It's a big, massive problem.
They didn't cheer, but them didn't sit comfortable. They are an absolute disgrace to the African place.
Utter disgrace.
You know, they are an impediment to the advancement and the development of Africa.
Yeah.
And they sit there comfortable.
And they are completely shameless. They are, because all the blood, the blood of millions of African men, women, and children have been shed over the decades. It's on their hands. It's on their hands.
Yes.
They are the reason why Africa is in the state that it is today.
Yeah.
Utter disgrace.
Wow. Brother Kwame Ossi says that after they killed Nkrumah and Lumumba, the dream of African unity died. Is the dream of African unity dead, Peter Mandaka?
Tendai Mwari, I pray and I hope not. It certainly isn't dead to you and I and to others tuning into this this event. It's certainly not dead to Pan-Africanists around the world, but perhaps there are not enough of us, and perhaps we're not chanting the Pan-African chant loudly enough. Perhaps we need to up the ante in terms of spreading the vision, mobilizing our people around the vision of Pan-Africanism. And we have to understand that concept of Pan-Africanism, which means the total liberation and unification of Africa and all African people under an autonomous Maatian world system. That's what we ought to be working towards. Total liberation and unification of Africa and all African people under an autonomous Maatian world system. It's got to be not just continental, it has to be global. Pan-Africanism has got to be embraced by Africans worldwide. And we the people must have that vision, the vision of the Osajifo, even if the leaders of our nations don't have that vision, we must have the vision. And we must organize around these principles, and we can do it. It's called nation building. We don't have to wait for these puppet leaders, these puppets, to assume this. They never will. They don't understand it. The mind, the brains are wired in such a way that they can't absorb this. But we who have that vision, we who share that vision, do we have the motivation? Do we have the insight? Do we have the commitment and the dedication to take to hand this vision, to take to hand the black print of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey? Because it's that black print that the Osajifo, as he told us, was trying to unfold across the African continent. So what we need to do is, wherever we are to organize around the nationalist Pan-Africanist principles that we are aware that the Osajifo tried to establish on the African continent. Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari. Brother Leader Bandaka, I've just glimpsed at the time and it's 2 minutes after the hour of 10 already. I don't know where the time goes. It always goes so quickly when we sit and we absorb your presentations, because, you know, they're just mesmerizing. They just take us, you know, around, well, it takes us from our seat to the continent of Africa. And it's almost as though, you know, we're on such a journey, an important journey that our revolutionary freedom fighters were on. And we all need to know the stories. We all need to know this history. It's so important. And family, we've been extremely fortunate to have had Leader Bandaka do a series of educational shows with us here on politics and politricks. So if you want to know who the betrayers are, if you want to know, you know, have a deeper insight into our revolutionary freedom fighters and what their fate was and where, you know, we went wrong as a people, maybe what we could do differently, please do check out those videos on this channel. If you want to catch Leader Bandaka live, you can catch him every Monday, 7 p.m. UK time on the Big G Galaxy Afiwi.net, or you can just go to Zeno and put in galaxyafiwi.net and it will come up. Wow, time waits for no one. But I certainly hope that from today's presentation, Leader Bandaka, everybody watching will tell family members and friends about, you know, the OAU, Kwame Nkrumah, the plan and the vision that he had for Africa, you know, where we went wrong and what the consequences are as a result of that really ill thought through decision that was made back in 1963. We have your presentation there so we can refer to the facts, figures, information and data. Thank you so much for that work that has gone into putting that together. We thank you and we thank your team. You know, so family, you know, this is a day where, as Leader says, we need to commemorate, evaluate and remember, you know, our founding fathers, where we were coming from as a people and where we still have yet to go and what we need to do to get there. Let me allow you to give us some closing remarks, or shall I remind everyone of tomorrow first? Yeah, we'll close out with you. And I'll just before I hand over my brother Leader, family, do join us tomorrow, 6 p.m. UK time, live on the PAC TV YouTube channel. That's the PACF TV channel. Okay, we have myself on the panel, we have Dr. Rev Shock Matthews, we have we've been joined by our brother James, Professor James Smalls, and we have a beautiful sister Asha on the panel. We will have a reasoning about bringing back the renaissance of African liberation. Wow. So do join us tomorrow, live and direct, family. Let's go over to our beloved Leader Bandaka to close us out of today's event.
Tenai Mwari. First of all, Sister Shanice, I give thanks again unto the Creator and the ancestors for blessing you in that special way that they have with the wisdom and the knowledge and the passion and compassion that you have for our people and your diligence in working for the upliftment and for the empowerment and liberation of our people. It's tireless work that you do, my sister, every single day of your life. And you must know that we treasure you and what you do for us. And I want to hear, I always have to hear my brother Errol, your king, who is by your side, because, you know, being that I have my queen by my side, I know how important that is. I know what a great blessing she is to me. So, you know, give thanks. Just hear brother Errol all the time for me. You know, I love my brother, and I hope he knows that. Beloved brothers and sisters, thank you so much for giving me the honor of listening to what I have brought to share with you this evening. And I hope that the Creator and the ancestors have blessed me to say it the way it needed to be said, and blessed you to hear it the way it needed to be heard. The most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey, says, intelligence rules the world, but ignorance carries the burden. And we are now carrying the burden of the ignorance of the majority of so-called leaders who gathered at the inaugural OAU meeting in 1963, who just did not share the intelligence that was embedded in the wisdom of the Osagifo, who spoke so powerfully and so passionately and so profoundly on that day, but they just could not see the vision. But we, brothers and sisters, must arrest the moment. We must seize the time. And it is never too late, as I said, for a shower of rain. But we must understand the concept of power, and it's our power that we must take back. As Papa Garvey says as I close, power is the only argument that satisfies man, except the individual, the nation, the race has power that is exclusive. That individual, nation, or race will be bound by the will of others who possess these great qualifications. He says, the African must get power, power of every kind, power in education, power in science, power in industry, power in politics, power in higher government, that kind of power that will stand out so that other races and nations will see, if not feel. Kanamariada, see you over the next few days. Kanamariada means by the will of the Creator, the African God. See you over the next few days as we celebrate Africa Liberation Day, putting back the liberation into Africa Day. Love you. Tendai Mari. Rumbid so kuna mwari ye Africa. To the God of Africa be the glory. Tendai Mari.
Tendai Mwari. To all of our audience that have been following us live today, we thank you so much. For those of you who've been following us here on Zoom, and to those of you who are following us live on YouTube, we thank you so much. More love, more strength, more budum. All being well, see you tomorrow. Thanks again, leader.
All right, see you tomorrow, sis.
Hey,
Tendai Mwari. And see you all, brothers and sisters. See you tomorrow.
Tendai Mwari.
Tendai Mwari.